Hi there and welcome. Steve Wills here. Thanks for joining me. This video will be the first in a series designed to cover all aspects of workflow development. By the end, I hope this will give you a good leg up in automating all of your company processes. So here we'll be creating the application from scratch, be assigning usernames, unique and sequential references to each workflow document. We'll be updating an historical log, as you see in the example there, notifying the next users in the process when it's their turn to intervene, and lastly, routing a document based on a value in the document. So getting right into it, we'll be creating the application from an NTF file. We'll set the access control list. We want to create the fields corresponding to the various constraints or roles. Be indicating the process name as well as the notes form name, creating the basic states, and then, of course, seeing the result. So, diving right in, we'll create the basic structure of the application using the NTF file. Hopefully I'll create, eventually, a video for those who are not familiar with Notes Domino. So this presumes that you have copied the Workflow Ascendant NTF file on your local PC. And so here we have it. We'll first change the access control list. It's very important that all workflow users in the process have the access level author with the ability to create documents. For the database administrator, very important that you select WA Manager role, and for that to take effect, we need to have a consistent ACL, as you know, and that is the essential. Now, this is the default workflow document provided with the system. You can, of course, rename it or use a different document as you like. As you can see, Manager was already there by default. We'll need to just add Director for the purposes of our application. We will need to add usernames to these in the workflow. Let's just tidy this up a little bit. All right, some other fields by default. Again, we'll just use those. Now going over to the Notes client. I'll just add this to the bookmarks. It just makes it easier to access getting in and out of the application. Get rid of that. As you can see, that workflow area there is what displays because of that WA Manager role. And we'll first define the processes. Now, you see these buttons here. They're used throughout the application to manipulate rows in the table. So here we'll add the name of the process as it's known to the end users. And this will be the notes form name that we just saw in the previous slide. And whenever you see blue text, that indicates that they are interpreted at formula statements. So now we'll go ahead and indicate the constraints and the roles. Now this is the error system used throughout in Workflow Ascendant. You can see the little red dots indicate the fields in question. The dialog box, of course, will indicate the relevant message. So we'll assign red, fictitious user red, to Director. We'll now set Manager. We'll indicate user orange. These fake IDs are extremely useful in debugging and testing workflows. And this is a default provided with the system. The author is obviously the document author. So now let's go ahead and create our state documents. We'll start with the initial state. $ created is always the initial state in a workflow. So we'll add a rule here. The asterisk indicates, it's a wildcard indicating anyone, so because this is the initial state, it means that anyone can create a document of this type. So we'll forward that on to manager. Now in turn, we will create the state document for manager. This will be the field manager, and we'll forward it on to, didn't want to do that, director. And now from director, we want to forward it onto archived. Now any state that has no rules associated with it is automatically considered an archived state. It's the end of the circuit for the workflow document. Give this a quick verify. Looks okay. So let's give it a try. We create the workflow document. You see there are no names, unfortunately, in our fields there, and that is a problem. Whenever Workflow Ascendant cannot resolve to usernames, the document is automatically archived as an error condition. So we need to get those usernames into the document. Now there are any number of ways you can do that. You can create your own routines. There are routines available with Workflow Ascendant. Anyone that starts with WA, of course, is one with the system. And this one will actually grab the names out of the field documents and stick them into the document. So that color green indicates that those are back-end routines. As you can see, there are the names inserted into the workflow document as we want. So forwarding the document now puts that over to orange. I'll now become user orange, the manager. And we will send that off now, as you can see, on to user director red. And lastly, from red onto the archive, which completes the circuit. Let's now assign some references to these documents. We want them to be unique and sequential when it's launched first into the workflow. We'll create the reference document and hopefully see the result. So getting right into this, very simple. Now these are very important as you want to be able to uniquely reference documents in the process, as well as ensure that none are missing, to be able to demonstrate that. So we're going from the created first state to any other state. As you can see here, that's the next reference that will be allocated. So let's create a couple of these to demonstrate the system. And as you can see here, both unique and sequential. We do want to automatically log all user interventions in the process, and that for audit purposes. So we'll be looking at both before and after. So we'll go in and take a look at one of the documents that we've already created. And when we go over to the historical tab, we'll see that there are no entries listed. So that's without changes. And now we'll go in and add the particular log entries we want to see reflected in that table. So created, we'll say author, hopefully. There we go. When that rule is executed, that text will be added to the historical log entries. And we'll do the same for manager as well as director. All right, those are our definitions. Let's see the result. Again, we'll create our workflow, send it off into the workflow. As you can see, it's gone over to user orange, the manager. From here, manager will send it off to the director red. And lastly, director red will archive the document. Going over to the archives, we want to take a look at that. Looking over at the historical, as you can see here, the log entries have been updated accordingly. We do want to notify users in the process when it's their turn to intervene. Now I'll put the default message we initially looked at in the app parameters doc. Probably 80% of the messages you sent will be of that type. So we'll put an *n here. That indicates the next users in the process. Now for director, of course, we can't say the next users in the process because there are none. It's archived. So we'll just say we'll send a message to the document author indicating that the document has been archived. So let's take a look at that. Going over to the mail. Now here is the message that was sent off. That's the default values coming from that default email that you see up in the right-hand corner. Now, that text won't work for the email for any workflow document being archived because we can't say we're waiting for your intervention. So here's an example. We want to personalize the message. So what we'll do here is go over to the notifications tab. We want to say author. Why don't we put the history authors as well? That's a reserved field automatically maintained by the system, all the users that have intervened in the process. And here I'm just copying and pasting from another state. And that is almost all of what you do in Workflow Ascendant is copy-paste from existing examples. So we'll use our same workflow document. We'll just push it further on into the workflow. And we'll see how that works. Now here is the one that we'll be interested in. Will come in as the director read. We'll send it off, and now let's take a look at the email. And as you can see here, the personalized email was sent as we defined, as well as notifying the intervening users in the workflow as well. All right, lastly, we want to route the document based on a set of conditions. So if total is greater than 500, it will go on to the director. Otherwise, it will be archived directly. Of course, we'll be going to state manager, and we'll be modifying the rules. Here we want to go to if the following condition is met. Here is total greater than 500. And we now need to indicate the else. So we'll say this goes to archived. We'll save it. Yeah. Aliases, you need to provide aliases with all conditional statements. So we'll say approved. And of course, to end the else statement, we need to terminate those with @true. So these are controlled by the system. We'll save that. We just want to indicate an email to send off when that path is taken in the workflow. It should have been an A, it's going on to archived. So we'll create a couple of workflow documents with different total amounts. We'll say this one is under the amount, so that'll be archived directly. And this one will be over the amount and therefore directed to the director. So now is manager orange. We will send it off. You can see it's disappeared. It's gone off to archive. We'll see that in a minute. And here the second has been routed to the director, and there's the last one to the archive. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you found it to be helpful. If you are an experienced notes developer, please understand this is only a beginner video just to cover the bases. We'll be ramping up the complexity very quickly. I hope you'll join me then. Thanks for joining me here today.